Hi everybody, welcome to my next video. Since I talked about Mammoth Cave, sorta, well, actually, sorta kinda halfway, Petty Star in that book that I showed in the last video, of course I don't have it now since I shot that video, returned that book to the library. There's rumors that there are allegedly haunted spots inside of the national park. Namely around Sand Cave where Floyd Collins died, and then by the other cave's entrance. There's actually 3 cave entrances at Mammoth Cave National Park that are like natural entrances. The historical entrance, which is there by the visitor center, and every Tom, Dick, and Harry that's ever taken the historical tour, for example, has been through that entrance. There's the Sand Cave entrance, which is near where the Wayfarer Inn is located, on that road there that leads right into the park, and that's just literally maybe not even 1/10 of a mile into the park itself. And then there's a 3rd cave entrance. I'm not totally sure where it is, but it's on the park property near Mammoth Cave National Park Baptist Church, where Floyd Collins is buried in that cemetery by that church. Supposedly, Floyd Collins haunts one of the cave entrances. Not the historical one, but one of the other 2 caves. It's said that he haunts it. Of course, he's missing part of his body, because what happened is Floyd Collins is buried in that cemetery on national park property, minus everything from his left knee down. Because what happened when they extracted him out of the cave after he died, they had to cut his leg off at the knee, because that was the leg that got trapped, and they just left it in the cave, to my knowledge. I know, so it's probably still down there inside the Sand Cave. And speaking of the Sand Cave, one of the last times that Tony and I were down at Mammoth Cave, I have a few pictures of a couple, a guy and a girl, illegally entering the Sand Cave. Even though there's signs on that trail that, plainly say something to the effect of, entrance into the Sand Cave is prohibited, considering what happened to Floyd Collins inside the cave in the 1920s, and due to the cave itself being unstable and not a safe place to enter in and of itself. I mean, why would you enter a place that you knew somebody died in, and it was an unstable place to enter, because it, crap would cave in. There's also a YouTube video here that I found of Mammoth Cave where it says it's like a EVP or something of something that sounds like a person trying to say, "Ghost of a Colonel, want to see?" It's kind of like, I think it's fake. No offense to whomever posted that, but I'm like thinking, well, where is, well, A, where did you tape it at? B, inside the cave, and B, why is there no pictures with it? You know what I'm saying? No offense. But that's what I was just wondering. Well, where's like they used to say in that old Wendy's commercial, where's the beef? It's like, where's the proof? There's tales of, and I used to have a book of haunted Mammoth Cave or something written by a tour guide. There's been guides have been inside the cave. There's a spot inside the cave that's, honest God, called the Methodist Church. And there's been stories of, people, guides seeing, these old slaves, like a couple, a guy and a girl and their kids, ghost kids, it looks like they're standing back from the rest of the group, and, that they're, dressed nice for a slave, and, it's like what it was is, I guess they were thinking that church was going to start or something, because they did actually have Methodist church services inside of Mammoth Cave. And there's also stories, and Patty mentioned this in the book, of people being pushed forward, poked, stuff happening to them that they couldn't explain, and this was all done by unseen persons. inside the cave, you know. Mainly this is what happens to the guides, you know. And it's like, I'll tell you what, it sometimes it can get really creepy inside that cave. You know, because it feels like somebody's like standing behind you watching you or something. You know, even though that's not possible unless, you know, you're talking about my husband watching me or something. You know, and like there's also stories about guides, you know, walking out of the cave being all spooked out because it's like, you know, they're like, it feels like somebody's watching and it's just, you know, them and the other person. And it's like the other person's like looking this way and this person's looking that way, and it's like, you know, there's like no way, you know, that there could have been somebody behind them, you know, stuff, unless there was like, you know, somebody, like another guide pranking them or something, you know. You know, and I tell you what, Tony, and I might have mentioned this in the Mammoth Cave montage that I shot that last time that we went down there. What it is the first time Tony ever went to Mammoth Cave was back in 2004, like right after my maternal grandfather passed away from an extended illness. What happened is I had talked to Tony at length about this. He thought I was screwing with him when I told him this, and I was being completely dead honest with him. I said, honey, listen, you know, I'll be honest with you. What'll happen is, we'll go on the tour. You know, at one point in the tour, they're going to sit you down. They're going to sit all of us down, the whole group, and they're going to make sure everybody's sitting down. And what they're going to do is they're going to tell you to stay put. They're going to turn off the lights. I told him, I said, it's so dark in that cave, you'll not be able to go like this and see your own hand. I'm serious. He thought I was kidding. Okay. And, you know, sure enough, you know, I knew it was coming. You know, of course, I also had the sense, because this was back when I was using a 35mm camera still, mainly. I mean, granted, I still have a 35mm camera, by the way. I don't use it very much, you know. Here it is. You know, I got film in it. I don't use it. I mean, I use this. This is my new camera that Uncle Sam bought me. Well, Uncle Sam bought me that camera too while he was at it. Feeling generous, he also bought me a bag to put both in, film and some extra batteries. But that aside, I was sitting there, you know, with my 35mm camera, and what happened is I got it out because I knew it was going to happen, and I got the flash heating up, you know, and you know, and the front tour guide, you know, says to everybody, okay, what's going to happen is the tour guide that's in the back, because there's always two tour guides, there's one in the front and one in the back. The one turns on the lights in the front, and the one in the back turns off the lights. The first tour guide said, okay, everybody, you need to stay seated for this next part. And I'm usually like thinking at this point, because they usually do it like late in the tour, so that way it gives everybody a chance to sit down, take a break, catch the breath, you know, whatever, kind of sit down. You know, he's like, okay, I want everybody to sit down and stay seated for this part. He's like, I'm going to have, and he or she'll say, I'll have, you know, the other guide, you know, if it's a lighted tour, like an electric light tour. He's like, I'm going to have, you know, tour guide number 2 turn off the lights. Well, what'll happen is tour guide number 2 will turn off the lights. My personal favorite is, you would have thought Tony had seen Jesus. I mean, it was funny. They, boom, turn off the lights. Tony found out that day that I was not lying to him. I wouldn't make something like that up. I wouldn't lie. You know, he couldn't see jack shit. I was sitting, like, you know, it was like this, you know, this is Tony, this is me. I mean, we're literally, and there's like a pathway between the two of us, and we're both sitting on benches, and I'm sitting there, and I looked at him and said, hey, honey. I said, Tony? And he said, what? I go, look directly in front of you. And he's like, why? I said, just do what I ask you to do, okay? And I took his picture with 800 speed film in my camera. I'll tell you what, I developed that picture later. I had the biggest laugh off of that because he has this shocked look on his face. And it came out, by the way. I mean, it's just, he was like, he had this look of like, you could tell he was like, holy God, she wasn't joking, you know. And I was laughing at him. I mean, and it's like, you know, with the cave tours, you know, there's been stories of people seeing Stephen Bishop, who is one of the original slave tour guides of Mammoth Cave. In fact, and I'll be honest with you on this, and Patty Starr didn't mention this in her book. I don't think she knew it. I can't say if she did or not. But the thing is Stephen Bishop, the historical tour, is the actual tour that he would take you on inside the cave. And he named everything just about on that tour. Seriously. Like the bottomless pit, he named. Fat Man's Misery, he named. Giant's Coffin, I wouldn't be shocked if he named it, okay? Great Relief Hall. Yeah, Great Relief Hall. I'll tell you what, true story about the Great Relief Hall. I ended up having to walk from the Giant's Coffin to Great Relief Hall and needed to pee really bad. That's not a fun walk, trust me. Fat Man's Misery is right before you get into Great Relief Hall. The ceilings come in like this, and the walls come in like this. You know, only a 2-foot high midget or a dwarf would get through that without a problem, because it's like, you know, this, you know, or you're a rattlesnake, you know. I'm serious. I mean, and it's just, I got out of that thing and I ran to the bathroom. I was like, oh my god, you know. And it's like I finally popped out of the thing. I was like, oh. I mean, it's just, and like then you run down the hill. Well, they used to have benches right there, but they got rid of them. I guess when they redid the toilets, because Mammoth Cave recently redid all the bathrooms inside the cave. It's like you run down the hill, and you stop down at the bottom. There's a fence. Like if you're like when you get down to the bottom and you see those benches there, there's like to your left, if you're facing the benches, is a fence, and if you walk past that fence, like down the hill, that leads to the Echo River. I'm one of the few people I know that's actually been on the Echo River. The Echo River is one of 3 rivers inside the cave. The Echo River, the River Styx, and I forget what the other river's name is, but those 3 are the 3 rivers that are in, you know, inside of the cave. And it is an active cave, incidentally. Well, the easiest way to describe it to you is they're in the basement of Mammoth Cave. You know, if it was a house, it'd be in the basement. And they're still going further and further down into the earth, you know, because water likes to go as low as possible. Another thing that is truly creepy is if you go on the Violet City tour, and this answered, of course, a lot of my questions about, you know, what's down the hill when you get to the Giant's Coffin, because there's like, if you're walking on like the historical tour, there's one thing you'll notice. The walk that you're walking on, it's padded down dirt, okay? Because millions upon millions upon millions of people have walked that, I mean, you know, since like back in the day. Well, if you look to your left, when you get to the Giant's Coffin, that dirt there is kind of like loose. It's almost like sand, is the easiest way to explain it to you. And it kind of goes down and there's like no electric down there. Well, the Violet City tour, that's where it diverges from the historical tour, because the historical tour will go around and behind the Giant's Coffin. The Violet City tour will go down the hill to the like left if you're facing the Giant's Coffin. I tell you what, you get to see the Tuberculosis huts. It is creepy down there. I tell you what, I mean, because it's by lantern light from that point on until you get out of the cave near the Carmichael entrance, like in the middle of the park. I tell you what, the creepiest thing is to see those TB huts. Well, I understand why they don't let you take photographs down there, because, you know, it's, you know, sensitive stuff and it could deteriorate, like, you know. But I tell you what, they have corpse rock down there, you know, because the tuberculosis people would die down there, and they just lay them out on that rock till it's time to move them up there, corpse rock. I tell you what, you go down maybe like another 50 to 100 feet from that, and they'll sit you down on the benches and do that in the dark thing. I tell you what, that's what I did on my birthday that year. So I know we were there in June. That was not fun. I tell you what, that was like sitting there thinking about that. I was like, you know, we talk about that way, you know, it's like TB huts and God only knows. I'll tell you what, it was real unnerving to do that. That was like the only time I've ever been unnerved sitting there for this. Like, like you think about that, because it's like, you know, the tuberculosis. Well, there was more than those stone buildings there. You know, I mean, it's just, you know, it's pretty bad. Oh, and for those of you that are a little bit chunky like I am, you might want to think about where you're getting your Twinkies from. I don't know if I mentioned this before, but guess what Twinkies are made out of? Gypsum. Guess where gypsum comes from? Caves. Mammoth Cave has gypsum, and that's also where you get your gunpowder, by the way. It's the basis for gunpowder, or it used to be. You know, so it's like after I found out that's where Twinkies were made from, I couldn't eat Twinkies after that. So I still don't eat Twinkies. I mean, I'm like, you would like a Twinkie? Ew! I'm like, no, I don't want, you know, that. You know, but yeah, seriously. I tell you what, it is just, you know, one of the most interesting things. And speaking of Stephen Bishop, by the way, Stephen Bishop was owned by the guy that ran the TB huts. He was a doctor person. I forget his name. Walker, I think. Both the doctor that owned Stephen Bishop back then and Stephen Bishop died of tuberculosis years later. Stephen Bishop, after he had earned his freedom, because he was alive, you know, during the Civil War, he earned his freedom. He stayed on as a guide, and Stephen Bishop is actually buried on, like Floyd Collins, on the National Park property. The only difference between Floyd Collins and Stephen Bishop is that Stephen Bishop's actually buried close to the visitor center. He is actually buried near the actual lodge and stuff, and the historical entrance. I mean, his grave overlooks the historical entrance that he went in and out of, like, practically every day, if not every day of his life, you know, back in the 1800s. You know, and I mean, it's neat. There is a tour that, you know, will take you to see his grave and everything. And by the way, speaking of him and the TB patients, there are some TB patients that are buried on the property as well, in the same cemetery as Stephen Bishop is. So, I mean, if you're into going to cemeteries, there you go. There's, God bless America, let's see, there's the one that Floyd Collins is buried in, there's the one that Stephen Bishop's buried in, there's, like, I think at least, there's definitely one other one than that, like heading back towards Sand Cave and everything. And I think there might be like a second or third one. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I know there's at least those three. But anyway, I'm going to pause here because I've got something else I want to share as well, alright? So hang on.